up, you guys? Welcome back to my channel, and if you're new here, just welcome. My name is Gemma Jade, but today we are going to be discussing the topic of underwater abductions. I've been mentioning more and more lately about how many abductees have reported being brought places inside the UFO crafts they're taken aboard that aren't outer space, mainly either underground or under the sea. These underwater abductions go hand in hand with a phenomenon that has been popping up more and more in recent years, and that's the phenomenon of USOs, or unidentified submerged objects, or as they're also called sometimes, unidentified submarine objects. And these are reports of strange and unidentified objects that are spotted either underwater, going into or exiting water sources all over the world. The reports are of super fast objects either cruising right below the surface of whatever the water source is, or, as I said before, either exiting or entering the water. Just as their counterparts above the water and in the sky, these objects have been the source of numerous abduction stories, again, all across the world and for so many years. They are much less well known than what we normally discuss in the UFOs or unidentified flying objects, but just as enigmatic and perhaps even more frightening. After all, how much just of our oceans have we not come up with the proper technology or resources to explore yet? And who knows what else is really going on under there at all? That's only the oceans, and believe me, so many of the USO experiences, abduction and otherwise, are happening in large rivers and lakes as well. So grab some scuba gear and extra oxygen as we take a dive into some fascinating and terrifying cases of underwater alien abductions and USOs. Let's jump right in. Our first encounter dates all the way back to 1950 and was reported by a woman named Betty Andreasen Luca. Betty was a homemaker, housewife, mother, and grandmother. The memory of what happened to her came back when she had undergone hypnosis and had originally taken place when she was only a child. She remembered being in her childhood home on an evening just like any other when suddenly, and the details of what she was doing when this occurred are non-existent, so please, as always, bear with me. Betty says she was taken aboard and flown away on what she described as a, quote, wheel-like vehicle, end quote, that went speeding off and basically crash-landed into a large body of water. The speed of the vehicle was unlike and faster than anything she had ever seen or been inside of before. And remember, this was 1950, so they didn't even have the horsepower in their vehicles anywhere near like we even do nowadays. As it approached the water, Betty was frightened as the vehicle showed no signs of stopping or even of slowing down. And with the superhuman speeds at which it was rolling along there, she knew some sort of crash was fast approaching. She thought for sure she and whoever else was aboard were going to die, and she braced herself for what she thought was imminent death. However, instead of crashing and or dying, the vehicle and whatever it was, Betty still couldn't be sure, quickly and smoothly went into the water and submerged to who knows how far down. It happened so fast, and Betty was obviously and understandably terrified and confused at the whole ordeal. Especially, remember, she was only a child at the time. The craft continued down into the depths without so much as a hiccup, and Betty remembered it hardly even hesitated as it did all of this. The craft was still moving at the same extremely high rate of speed as it was when it first took off and hadn't slowed a bit, and it continued to travel in this way and at this speed while underwater, obviously set on reaching a specific destination. It seemed to be on some sort of autopilot because she hadn't up till this point seen anything or anyone else. It eventually entered into an underwater tunnel system, which was very well lit by way of what looked to be icicles all along the walls. Eventually, and after traveling for what seemed to be a very long time, despite the desperately fast speeds, the vehicle came to a gigantic dome-shaped facility, which Betty referred to as a base. She first saw a bunch of people, presumably other human beings, inside of what looked to be glass containers, just hanging there through what seemed to be some sort of suspended animation. Just there, hovering in space and time as though they were frozen in place, midair, inside some kind of water or whatever that were inside these glass or plastic tubes. She said she thought they were in what she referred to as, quote, museums of time, end quote. She thought this because she claimed there were hundreds or possibly thousands of these people, and all of them were wearing clothing reminiscent of one time period or another throughout hundreds of years of history, maybe even since the beginning of time, and that for each one of these time periods, the people wearing that era of clothing all had their glass containers in these sort of clusters. There were rows and rows of people, and they were all different ages, as well as rows and rows of animals as well, both extinct and not. Betty said that was that, and after she had seen all of this, she was sped the same way and at the same rate of speed. She was brought there home, where she forgot about the entire incident until she had undergone hypnosis, when she started having terrible and vivid nightmares of it all 30 years later in 1980. While all of this seems to be absolutely fascinating, and once again, and as usual, I am admittedly jealous of the event and the fact that I can't see something as incredible as what Betty claims to have seen. However, regarding Betty herself, she has met with a lot of scorn in her encounter stories with skepticism, because this isn't the only thing she ever reported witnessing, seeing, and or experiencing. She has also made claims that she met, quote, servants of Jesus, end quote, in the form of angelic aliens, whom she claims to have encountered a few other times as well. Whether or not she actually experienced the encounter we just went over or not is up for debate, but it is worth mentioning someone else came forward with a very similar report, at least to some of what Betty Lucas said. In 1979, in Hialeah, Florida, in the United States, a man named Filiberto Cardenas and his wife were out driving from place to place trying to find a pig for a pig roast they were having the following weekend, but they were having a hard time finding what they were looking for. By the time they were ready to call it quits, it had become dark outside and they got lost while trying to find their way back. They accidentally took a wrong turn down a dark and lonely stretch of rural road, and while driving their car, it stalled out and the engine, for seemingly no reason, wouldn't turn back over. They were lost on a darkened, spooky road and their car wouldn't start. Nothing good could possibly come out of this. I mean, am I right? Well, they thoroughly checked their vehicle and couldn't seem to find anything wrong with it, and all at once a very loud and terrible sound, which they both likened to thousands of hives of buzzing bees, filled the air around them, completely invading not only their ears, but all of their senses as well. As this was happening, the car, which they were now sitting in, started vibrating and shaking as though there were a sudden earthquake. All around them, the color of red and purple lights danced through the trees, and at this, Filiberto's wife screamed, in a mix of what I'm sure was terror and sheer panic. Filiberto himself was paralyzed and lifted out of his seat by some unseen force. He lost consciousness, and when he woke up, he was still paralyzed, but no longer in his vehicle. He claimed that he was in a room with humanoid beings wearing helmets all around him, and that the room itself was shiny. He explained that the language these beings spoke to each other was reminiscent, at least to him, of German. That's what he thought. He didn't speak German, but that's what he thought it sounded like. What happened next is something we have heard of happening before, and recently, in front of him as he sat there paralyzed, there was a giant screen on the wall with images flashing quickly, one right after another. He claims that what was flashing before him were important points in the Earth's history. So like very important historical events were just flashing very quickly on this screen right before his eyes. There weren't only images of the past though, and what followed were brief flashes of what he assumed to be was the future of Earth as well. Once the images were done flashing there before him, he was brought to a much smaller craft that detached from the larger one he realized he was just on, and this went shooting off toward what he thought very much looked like a beach. So it was only then, when this little piece of craft detached, that he realized he was even on some kind of craft. This ship seemed to almost glide over the sand and quickly and easily went down into the ocean. If you think this is strange, then just wait, because there's plenty more where that came from. Filiberto said the ship then went through a series of long underwater tunnels, which all seemed to be brightly lit by some form of bioluminescence. I had to look up what bioluminescence was, guys, and apparently it means that living organisms, like sea creatures or something similar, were what was producing the light. The ship passed through these tunnels eventually, and it came to a stop in some dry area within the wet, deep blue sea. So a dry area inside of the ocean. It was described in my source material as, quote, a sort of cavern in an air pocket, end quote. He immediately noticed large symbols of snakes all over the walls. Our witness/victim was then taken out of the ship and made to sit on a large rock, and that's when a human man came out to welcome him. The man seemed friendly and explained to Filiberto that he was from Earth and that he worked for the aliens. Our witness was brought into some kind of gigantic city, only it was underground, but under the ocean as well. After that, though, he went right back to where it all started from in his vehicle. There were some prophecies that Filiberto claimed to have been shown that night, and they were the election of President Reagan in 1980, the earthquake in Mexico City in 1985, the assassination of Anwar Sadat in 1981, he was the president of Egypt at the time he was killed, and the demonstration by Chinese students in 1989 in Tiananmen Square. Oh yeah, and he also claims to have predicted the Gulf War, which started in 1990 against Iran and Saddam Hussein. It could have been Iraq. I don't want to be wrong there. I'm not sure though who he told these predictions to, if anyone other than maybe some friends and family members, and I'm not sure if it's all true, as I can't seem to find a way to corroborate any of it. It would be pretty fascinating and also very validating to most of everything else he said if we could somehow verify these claims, but I only have what I have and it isn't any more than what I just told you. So let's move on. Let's take into account now a man named Orlando George Ferrati, who in 1965 was fishing on the northern coast of Argentina when he reports a sudden feeling of being intently watched that seems to have come up from nowhere. When it finally became too much to bear and he turned around to see if he was in fact being watched, he came face to face with a very tall humanoid being. It was pale, stood at approximately 7 feet tall, with light-colored eyes and wearing a sort of yellow and shiny one-piece jumpsuit. Our witness said the being obviously sensed his fear because it started trying to telepathically communicate with him to be calm and that he didn't in fact have anything at all to be scared of. In his own words, he said, quote, "It was a very dark night. This being was telling me mentally, take it easy, don't be afraid, you mustn't be scared." Then he turned around, taken my arm, and placed some kind of powder box on top of the wall. When opened, this box gave off a phosphorescent luminosity which enabled me to see more details. The entity's garb was of a yellow mustard color. He had no wrinkles, zippers, or buttons, and it had a hook at the back of his head. He was repeating, "Don't be afraid, you will come with me, we will take a long trip," end quote. This being then started tinkering with the little box thing, and suddenly a large craft emerged from the water, which he described as, quote, "like an inverted saucer," end quote, and came close enough so it was hovering just above them. A ramp then came down from a door that opened underneath, and the alien gestured for our witness to climb aboard, which he did, as he now said he was in sort of a trance and didn't feel like he had much choice or control, though admittedly he most likely didn't realize this until later when remembering the event. He probably thought he was going along out of his own volition because he was entranced and confused. Once inside the craft, he was met by the sight of an 18-year-old human female who also tried to ease his fears by telling him he needed worry or to be fearful, and that the extraterrestrials were actually their friends. She explained she had also been abducted into the ship right before he was, and that her name was Elena. The alien had them both change into jumpsuits and explained that they were going to be traveling beneath the ocean to Africa. Along the way, our witness claims they stopped at what he referred to as, quote, "an immense underwater dome," end quote, which he saw housed some sort of base. He was told by the ET friend that this is where many experiments were carried out, and that this base was also where, quote, "the ships were reconditioned," end quote. The extraterrestrial given our witness and Elena a tour told them that Earth was a zoo of sorts, and that almost all life on it had come from extraterrestrials doing genetic experiments. The humans were fed some sort of colorful egg, brown, yellow, green, and red, which had no taste at all, but seemed to curb any hunger they may have worked up throughout this long journey so far. Once they ate, they were placed on a type of stretcher and fell into a sleep our witness feels may have been compelled or a result of something in the egg things they were given, because he said that despite everything going on, he and Elena slept remarkably sound, again, for what they were going through and what was going on all around them. Once they woke up, they were informed that their pineal glands had been reactivated and that, quote, "the results of the tests were good," end quote. They had no idea what any of that meant, and it's not further explained either. They were told, however, that the reactivation of their pineal glands would enable them both to be able to telepathically communicate with these particular extraterrestrials. Again, I'm jealous, and again, I remind you all that the pineal gland is the official title for what we have come to know in this community as the third eye. Orlando and Elena were sat there in order to listen to the extraterrestrial wax philosophical for quite a long time. They were told how the ships worked and given tons of information about the home planet of the extraterrestrials, none of which they reiterated or reported here. All at once and seemingly out of nowhere, our witness woke up right where he started in the first place, on the beach where he was originally fishing innocently before all of this started. At first, he had no memory at all of what happened, but it seemed to all come back to him, at least at some point. But again, we are left hanging without knowing any more details about any of it. So I know this was a short one, guys, but I want to know what you all think. I mean, I wish the encounters were longer, or when I search, I can find more information on at least some of them, at least some of the time. I often wonder what it takes to have extraterrestrials abduct you and do things like show you the future or even the past and possibly activate the pineal gland, fully activate the third eye. It's amazing. I wonder, but I have no clue because I haven't been fortunate enough to have it happen to me yet. I'm working on it, guys. And when it does, believe me, I'm going to have some stories to tell you all. I got you. Do you guys think there's a possibility that there are bases just like the ones we have come to know as the ones underground, think Dulce base, but underwater? I think there definitely are because, as I mentioned in the beginning, we haven't even scratched the surface, literally, of what's in our oceans. As always, let me know what you all think in the comments below, please. And that's all I have for you today, guys. Please give this video a big thumbs up if you enjoyed hanging out with me, if you enjoyed the content, and if you just want to see me smile. Spread the love by sharing this video. Please subscribe if you haven't already. Getting that sub count up. Thank you guys so much. Thank you to everyone who's donated gifts through my Amazon wishlist gift link, who purchased books and or autographed copies of the books. The links for those, Missing the Fae Theory and Encounters with Evil, 101 Terrifying and True Stories, Kindle and paperback, in the description box, okay? Links to the Amazon wishlist gift link in the description box. If you want autographed copies or anything else that you may need, please email me at GemmaJadeParanormal@gmail.com. If you'd like a personal intuitive oracle reading from me, also email me. Through Thanksgiving of 2022, this year they are half price, so $20 for a personal reading. I'm also doing more in-depth readings, guys. Celtic cross with certain decks. I'm able to do love readings now. And if you want a reading where you can sit and ask me questions as I answer them, that's where the video chat readings do come in. So please hit me up if you want any of that. I am able to do it. I have over 100 decks, well over, and let's do this. If you don't know what Intuitive Oracle is, please stop in on this channel Wednesday night starting at 7:25 p.m. and going 3 to 4 hours. So either 10:30 or 11:30, kind of depending. It's me and Ghost Dragon ZW, and I pull one card for anyone and everyone that comes in. If you can make a donation, that's great. If not, just come hang out, get yourself a reading for the week, and see if you like it. See if you're interested in getting more personal with it. To make donations to the channel, PayPal, Cash App, Patreon, and my Amazon wish list gift link for gifts. If you haven't checked out the show Disembodied Voices with Dr. Kelly Renee Schutz on the Paraflix network, it's Paranormal Netflix, you stream it, PARAFLIXX. They give a 1-week free trial and then it's $3.99 a month thereafter. I am season 3, episode 6. It's a 2-parter, 2 hours of me talking about my life as a medium, all of my paranormal, supernatural, even extraterrestrial happenings, how it affected me, just so much. I really enjoyed that interview, and Dr. Kelly Schutz is just an absolute gem. I love her. She is totally an honorary gemstone. Guys, please be kind to each other. It doesn't cost anything, and the world could really use some kindness right now. Be kind to yourselves and never accept anything less than others being kind to you. If nobody told you today you're amazing, you're capable, you're wonderful, you're smart, you can do anything that you want to do. Just be kind. Be kind to yourself. Be patient. Show grace. Always go in grace. Smile at a stranger. Remember, I believe in you, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.